Folks, for the hour, as Charlie Rose used to say when he had a career, I'm talking to Thomas Klingenstein. He's a businessman, a philanthropist, partner of the investment firm of Cohen Klingenstein. He's also chairman of the Claremont Institute, which I have revered over the years. Tom, it's great to have you. We're talking about a lot of things. You've written an article recently in Newsweek, and you've given a speech. Where did you give the speech that's been making the rounds on the internet? I can't remember where that was.
Well, originally I gave it to a Republican club.
Well, I just want to say that it's important that we clarify some things. One of the things that you were just saying when we went to the break was that what the left today, what the Democratic Party today wants to do is very radically different than what they would have wanted to do even 30 years ago or 20 years ago. They want, by giving themselves over entirely to the radical left wing of their party, they are all in with the so-called 1619 project and with the idea that America is fundamentally and inherently damned, that there is nothing that we can do to improve ourselves. In the past, we would have all wanted to say, well, how can we be better? And Martin Luther King Jr. said that the founding documents are promissory notes, and it had a positive vector. It seems that they have changed dramatically, that they're where the French Revolution was. They say we've got to wipe everything out, if that means looting and burning, and we don't care. We want to start anew. Now, they're not being quite clear about that because that would scare many Americans. But it seems that that is, in fact, where they are today and why Biden chose Kamala Harris rather than anyone else he might have chosen. She is genuinely the most liberal of 100 senators. Hard to believe. Am I getting it roughly right that that's where they're taking us, but they're not telling us?
Though, yes. Though, in fact, they are, or at least beginning to tell us. One of the blessings, I think, of these riots, if one could say there were any blessings, is that it revealed the agenda of the left in a way that hasn't been so clear.
Right.
The radical wing is the agenda of Black Lives Matter. Well, now we can see what the agenda is because it's written down, right? They want to destroy the traditional family, religion, Marxism, transgender everything, right? And that's what's involved in destroying the American way of life. You'll notice, to get to your point, that the stuff about destroying the traditional father family, they took out of their mission. Why? Because, as you said, to the American people, that is too radical. And yet it's very important that the American people understand that that's where they're going. That's where they're going.
Well, isn't that
and if I may,
Marxism?
Yes, yes, it is. In fact, this is a form of Marxism, but instead of having property classes, we have race classes. Instead of the oppressor group being capitalist, they're white people. But this is Marxism, which is why sometimes we call it cultural Marxism. If I may, Eric, I want to explain one thing, if I may, because I think it might make people understand a little bit better what's happening and might allow them to anticipate what will happen. And that is this: they want to remake, as you say, American society. They don't want to improve it, which incidentally is why we ought not to negotiate with them, because we're not going in the same direction. So what is it that they want to remake America into? Well, what they say is they want a country where all identity groups, defined by race or gender, whatever, all identity groups are equal with respect to income and power, That means same number of chief executive officers, senators, physicists, baseball players for each of the identity groups. Well, that way of life cannot, and that understanding of justice cannot possibly coexist with a society such as ours that is based on individual freedom, because in a free society, there will always be group differences, particularly between men and women, because men and women are different. You heard that here first. And so what this BLM way of life requires is crushing all these natural differences, not just the differences between men and women, but the differences that evolve largely through culture among groups. So this can only happen with a tyranny. But the point is, if you understand where they're going, I think it's easier to make sense of their policies, and also allows you perhaps to anticipate. You know they have to destroy the mother-father family, even if they don't tell it to you right now.
Well, this is what's so horrific is that I think, I mean, I always, joke around about my in-laws were FDR Democrats, and they voted, all the way along for the Democratic Party. But for them, the Democratic Party was FDR. It was for the working man and so on and so forth. And I think that there's that kind of a lag that most people are not perfectly up to date. And so they think that they're voting for Hillary Clinton, or they're voting for Bill Clinton, or they're voting for you name it, somebody in the last 30 years that seems, like vaguely centrist and so on and so forth. And the fact of the matter is that the reason they're allowed to believe this lie is because the mandarins of power in the Democratic Party haven't had the guts really to speak up. I mean, it seems obvious that folks like Nancy Pelosi have made a deal with the devil. They understand that they have nowhere to go, and they've just got to, clench their jaw and move forward, but that they do not have the ability to push back against the AOCs and the Omars and so on and so forth. Somehow they're allowing themselves to be used, maybe in the way that Hindenburg allowed himself to be used as cover for Hitler until he could be kicked away and Hitler could do as he liked. But I think that they are really allowing themselves, this older generation of Democrats, to be used. And for sure, Joe Biden is allowing himself to be used as cover for a darker, much more radical agenda than his would have been.
The Nazis are not a bad example, because like in all revolutions, they are led by a small, zealous few, and the rest go along. They go along because they're fearful, because most of us just follow a particular drift, but also, and this was the case with the Nazis, I think, that the moderates think that when they get in power, they can moderate the radicals.
Right.
But that never happens. And you're absolutely right. The Democratic Party has been radicalized. They don't know it. I think the riots ought to have revealed this, or they did reveal it, because those were not BLM riots. Those riots could have been stopped in a heartbeat if the Democrats wanted to stop them. But they didn't. They egged them on, the media supported them, and the Democrats funded them. The major corporations funded these riots, right? These were not BLM riots. These were the riots of the Democratic Party. Part of the difficulty, I think, of Americans seeing this is, Joe Biden seems like a kind of reasonable man. I don't presume that he wants to overthrow the American way of life. I'm assuming that most run-of-the-mill politicians would disavow the radical aspects of this agenda, but they're going to be carried along. They would have disavowed gay marriage at one point, right? But at some point, it becomes the zeitgeist. It's where things are flowing. So one of the things we have to make clear, which is what you tried to just make clear, which is the Democratic Party is really the AOC party. That's a revolutionary party. That party wants not to improve, but remake. That's why you can't negotiate.
Well,
And this, by the way,
sorry, forgive me. We're going to go to a break. We're going to allow Thomas Klingenstein to complete that sentence and that thought when we come back. Folks, this is too important to miss. We'll be right back.